In the news tonight, His Majesty calls on Muslim scholars meeting in Amman to come up with recommendations to confront the rhetoric of ethnic violence and intra-religious sectarian division. Hundreds of Palestinians take part in the funeral procession of Majid Lahlouh, who was killed in a morning raid by Israeli soldiers in the Jenin refugee camp. And Egypt's public prosecution orders that the top leader of the Muslim Brotherhood to be detained for 15 days on charges of inciting public violence and killings. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty King Abdullah called on Muslim scholars to come up with recommendations to confront the rhetoric of ethnic violence and intra-religious sectarian division and to reject such false thought. In remarks at a meeting with Muslim scholars attending the 16th conference of the Royal Al-Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought here in Amman, the King warned of the danger of manipulating religion for political purposes and sowing sectarian division. His Majesty said equal citizenship rights and justice are basic requirements for the sustainability of states and political system, adding that democracy is when all share the feeling that they are truly represented.
كما أن هذا المؤتمر يتزامن مع دعواتنا المتكررة للرفض ووقف العنف الطائفي والمذهبي لأن فيه خراب الأمة. وهنا أكرر التحذير من خطورة استغلال الدين لأغراض سياسية وبث الفرقة والطائفية البغيضة. أنتم علماء الأمة وأمامكم مسؤولية مواجهة خطاب الفتنة الطائفية في سوريا ومنع انتشارها في العالم العربي والإسلامي لحقن الدماء في سوريا والحفاظ على وحدتها ووحدة الأمة العربية والإسلامية.
مجرد أرقام أو نسب تستخدم من
Majesty pledged to work with the scholars to implement any initiative to serve the Islamic world, preserve its unity, and discourage Muslims from accusing each other of apostasy. He also told the scholars they have a crucial role in ensuring commitment to the Amman message, which defines a true Muslim and determines who is qualified to issue religious edicts or fatwas. His Majesty sent a cable of condolences to Saudi King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud on the passing away of his brother, Prince Msaad bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. In his cable, the King expressed to the Saudi monarch his deep sorrow and heartfelt condolences over the death of Prince Msaad. As the third round of Mideast peace talks was to convene in Jerusalem, Chief Israeli negotiator Tzipi Livni predicted that the U.S. brokered negotiations between the Palestinians and Israelis will result in dramatic Israeli decisions. Livni coupled her forecast with acknowledgement that at least one partner in Israel's right-wing coalition opposed the goal set by the U.S. to create a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Speaking on Israel Radio, Livni said it was no secret that the pro-settler Jewish Home faction sees negotiations as wrong and opposes two states for two peoples. She called on the main opposition Labour Party to lend its support now to the government's efforts, suggesting such political backing could help achieve a land for peace deal. And in the West Bank, hundreds of Palestinians took part in the funeral procession of Majid Lahlouh, who was killed in a morning raid by Israeli soldiers in the Jenin refugee camp. Occupation forces shot 20-year-old Lahlouh with a bullet to his heart and wounded two others during the raid, claiming that Palestinians opened fire at them from rooftops. But eyewitnesses said Israeli troops entered the narrow streets of the camp at dawn, apparently seeking to arrest a local resident. Palestinian youth threw stones at them and they responded with live gunfire. Over to Syria, where government forces are reported to have attacked rebel positions in the eastern city of Deir ez-Zor to counter a rebel advance that threatened to bring the city under the control of anti-Assad forces. Elsewhere, the army hit rebel forces in Huwaiqa district with tanks and multiple rocket launchers and also battled them in territory separating Huwaiqa from the district of Jura. Earlier, there were reports of exchange of gunfire between the army and rebels in the Barza district of the capital, Damascus. Rebels claim the soldiers they shot at were from the Lebanese Hezbollah group and the Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas brigade. Meanwhile, Syrian refugees continue to stream over to border into northern Iraq, where Kurdistan regional government put in place a daily quota of 3,000. Since Thursday, about 30,000 refugees, believed to be mainly Syrian Kurds, have poured into Iraq. A further 3,000 were said to be lined up to cross today, according to UNHCR. President of Iraqi Kurdistan, Masoud Barzani, visited a camp hosting the refugees for a first-hand look on their situation. The United Nations says the influx is of the biggest single outward migrations in a civil war that has driven millions from their homes. And in Egypt, the public prosecution ordered that the top leader of the Muslim Brotherhood to be detained for 15 days on charges of inciting public violence and killing. Egyptian state news agency reported Mohammed Badia's arrest at an apartment in Nasser city in the early morning hours today. The arrest is seen to signal the determination of Egypt's security to silence Muslim Brotherhood protests against the ousting of Mohammed Morsi. Badia was charged last month with inciting violence along with other Brotherhood officials. Alongside his two deputies, he is due to stand trial on the 25th of this month. Meanwhile, former Egyptian presidential candidate and liberal politician Amr Moussa called on terrorist factions to stop threatening violence against Egypt. Moussa met with the presidential advisor on media affairs, Ahmed al-Musallimani, who is on a mission to hold talks with Egypt's political figures on the current situation. Moussa, who has held talks with European officials and several ambassadors, told reporters in a news conference that Egypt is at a critical point.
احنا بنواجه عمليات عنف وإرهاب خطيرة جدا.
We are facing a very dangerous situation of violence and terrorism, and the society is under threat with such policies. The issue is not a national rift. The issue is the threat of Egypt's stability, and we are all standing against the threat to Egypt's stability. I call on every faction to stop their threats, because in the end it will cause damage and the tables will turn on those who threaten Egypt with terrorism.
Foreign ministers of the European Union, another donor to Egypt, meet in Brussels tomorrow to discuss how it might apply its influence for a peaceful compromise. And we stay with Egypt, where a Cairo court will tomorrow review a petition for the release of deposed President Hosni Mubarak. According to his lawyer, Mubarak could leave prison this week as the legal grounds for his continued detention crumble. Mubarak was sentenced to life in prison last year for failing to stop the killing of protesters during the uprising against him in 2011, but the appeals court accepted his appeal in January and ordered a retrial.
The president has no pending cases left except for the case of Al-Ahram newspaper gifts. I appealed the decision to hold him yesterday, and the date for the appeal hearing is tomorrow, Wednesday, August 19th. The appeals court in northern Cairo, which specializes in appeals, will move to the prison where he is held, and I will give my defense. And if God willing, there is a decision to release him, then there will be no reason for him to be held in temporary detention.
In international news, British authorities forced the Guardian newspaper to destroy material leaked by Edward Snowden, its editor has revealed, calling it a pointless move that would not prevent further reporting on US and British surveillance programs. In a column in today's paper, he said the bizarre episode a month ago and the detention at London's Heathrow Airport 2 days ago of a partner of a Guardian journalist showed press freedom was under threat in Britain. Here's more.
Press freedoms are under threat from the British government, warns this column in the Guardian newspaper. Editor Alan Rusbridger says British authorities threatened the paper with legal action unless it destroyed materials obtained from ex-CIA contractor Edward Snowden. He called the censorship a pointless move that would not prevent further reporting on U.S. and British surveillance programs. Guardian reporter Glenn Greenwald was the first to publish U.S. and British intelligence secrets leaked by Snowden, the former U.S. National Security Agency contractor who is wanted in the U.S. and has found temporary asylum in Russia. On Sunday, UK authorities used an anti-terrorism law to detain and interrogate Greenwald's Brazilian partner David Miranda for 9 hours at Heathrow Airport. Minister of Justice Damian Green has defended the move.
The Metropolitan Police were acting as they do under the law, that the law is there to protect us from anything that will increase the danger of terrorism. And because these powers are extensive, we have an independent investigator. He is talking to the Metropolitan Police later today, and I suggest we all wait and see what he has to say.
A U.S. security official told Reuters that Miranda was detained as a signal that the British government was serious about shutting down the leaks.
U.S. President Barack Obama and his family welcomed a new family member to the White House. No, it's not a baby, but a new puppy they named Sunny due to her energy and affectionate nature, according to the White House. Sunny was born in Michigan in June last year. Like the other dog, Bo, she is a Portuguese water dog, which is favorable to the Obamas because they have allergies in the family. Barcelona coach Tata Martino acknowledged that Barca are favourites to win the Super Cup, but added that their opponents, Atletico Madrid, are a winning team. The first leg of the Spanish Super League will be held tomorrow. Martino predicts the match to be a hard test. Martino made his debut as Barca coach in Sunday's opening La Liga 7-0 home win against Levante. He surprised fans at the Camp Nou Stadium when he took off World Player of the Year Lionel Messi after 70 minutes with a scoreline at 6-0, something almost unheard of in the Pep Guardiola and Tito Villanova eras.
No significa que está garantizado ni mucho menos. Al contrario, nos hace exigir aún más para poder asumir ese rol que nos toca.
And finally, for a quick look at the weather. Fair weather continues tonight with northwesterly moderate winds. Tomorrow, normal summer conditions prevail in hilly areas, but it will be hot in the Jordan Valley, the Badia, and also in the Gulf of Aqaba, with northerly moderate to brisk winds and calm seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, his reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty calls on Muslim scholars meeting in Amman to come up with recommendations to confront the rhetoric of ethnic violence and intra-religious sectarian division. Hundreds of Palestinians take part in the funeral procession of Majid Lahlour, who was killed in a morning raid by Israeli soldiers in the Jenin refugee camp. And Egypt's public prosecution orders that the top leader of the Muslim Brotherhood to be detained for 15 days on charges of inciting public violence and killings. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tufan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.